Bet you can't even afford a single item in your cart without assistance." Cashier Raymond Fletcher's smirk widened as he gestured toward the organic groceries that elderly Elena Barnes had carefully selected. The afternoon sunlight streaming through Sterling Market's skylights illuminating her dignified face. Store supervisor Stephanie Owens crossed her arms over her orange company shirt, her voice dripping with condescension. "This isn't a charity, ma'am. Maybe try the discount store down the street where they're more accommodating." Other customers whispered and pointed as Elena Barnes reached into her blue jacket pocket, her movements deliberate and calm. What none of them knew was that her son Marcus had been watching from the security office upstairs, and their jobs had just ended the moment they decided to humiliate his mother. Welcome to Frost Folktales. This is where we tell the stories of those who were underestimated, dismissed, and targeted, yet chose courage over silence. If these stories move you, subscribe and be part of a community that refuses to let them fade into the background. Elena Barnes had entered Sterling Market 20 minutes earlier with the same calm grace that had helped her navigate 70 years of life's challenges. The upscale market was struggling with the afternoon rush. Elena wore her finest blue jacket over a simple white blouse. Her silver hair was carefully combed, and despite being 72, she stood tall. She moved with determined steps through the produce section, selecting organic apples and top-quality vegetables with the careful precision of someone who knew quality. At first, the other customers barely noticed her. Sterling Market catered to a wealthy clientele. Its aisles were filled with imported goods sold at high prices and gourmet selections. Elena didn't fit the typical customer profile here, nor did she possess the kind of luxurious attire they expected. Her plus-size figure and the simple clothes she wore made it clear she didn't belong here. Her clothes and measured movements set her apart from the others in an environment where designer handbags and luxury cars in the parking lot were seen as silent proof of belonging. Raymond Fletcher had been working on the express checkout for the last 3 years. He wore a short-sleeved uniform shirt that had the Sterling Market logo on the chest. Fletcher, a 28-year-old male, feels that just because he's standing behind the register, this gives him permission to give orders to the customers who pass his register. His first sighting of Elena occurred at the organic fruit counter when he witnessed her careful inspection of every single container for all the wrong reasons. "Look at that," he said to his co-worker at the next register and pointed to Elena. "Someone seems to be living above their means." He said this loud enough for customers around us to hear, which was the beginning of the humiliation that awaited. The other cashier laughed nervously. They were aware Raymond was prejudiced, but did not have the guts to say anything. Elena went back to choosing her things with calm dignity, remaining oblivious to the people beginning to point at her. The butcher counter was stocked with grass-fed beef, the international aisle held organic pasta, and an artisanal cheese was from the specialty section. None of the options were ostentatious but simply showed good taste and awareness of quality ingredients. In the narrow confines of Raymond Fletcher's mind, there was no other reason for her presence in that expensive environment except trouble. 15 minutes into her shopping trip, Stephanie Owens arrived at Elena's location in an orange supervisor shirt, clipboard in hand. At the age of 35, Stephanie had been promoted from cashier to supervisor, having shown the company much loyalty. She had never minded ditching dignity by returning disruptive customers to the outside world. Elena recognized the warmth of suspicions in her smiles, although they appeared warm on the surface. "Are you finding everything you need today?" Stephanie asked, her voice dripping with sweetness. As Elena looked up from comparing 2 olive oils, her brown eyes fixated on Stephanie's with genuine politeness. "Yes, thanks. The range of choices here is large." Elena was well-spoken and likely educated and very well-traveled. But to Stephanie, all she heard was what she expected to hear from someone she deemed unworthy of Sterling Market. "Well, you know, we do cater to a very specific clientele here. Our prices tend to be premium," Stephanie's emphasis on the final word carried clear implications, her message unmistakable despite its polite delivery. Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes, a recognition of the familiar dance of discrimination disguised as helpfulness. "I'm quite aware of the prices," Elena replied calmly, returning her attention to the olive oil selection. Her dismissal of Stephanie's warning clearly rankled the supervisor, who wasn't accustomed to having her authority questioned, even politely. As Elena headed toward the checkout counter with her cart overloaded with carefully selected items valued at more than $200, the whispers began. In the wine section, Lorraine Whitfield, dressed in a striking red designer dress and adorned with diamond jewelry, watched curiously. At 53 years old, Lorraine represented the kind of woman the sterling market target. Her wealth seemed apparent in each accessory. In addition, she wore her sense of entitlement like bling. "I wonder if she's even aware of how much all that costs," Lorraine said to her friend, pitched for nearby shoppers. "It would cause embarrassment to reach the cash register and find yourself unable to pay." As she said those words, glances were exchanged between the other customers, all wearing barely suppressed smirks. Elena approached the checkout lane of Raymond Fletcher with the same quiet dignity she showed while shopping. She started placing her items on the conveyor belt with a steady and smooth motion as customers and staff members started giving this woman a lot of attention. The afternoon sunlight continued shining through the skylights above, casting everything in sharp relief and ensuring that every detail of the coming confrontation would be perfectly visible to the store's security cameras. Raymond Fletcher's face changed from slight contempt to overt hostility as he slowly and theatrically began to look through Elena's things. Strawberries, organic, $12.99. Ribeye from grass-fed beef, $47.50. With every price that he called out, his voice became louder, as if to draw attention to the climbing total and the idea that Elena could not afford it. Raymond said, speeding up his scanning rate, "That's quite an expensive collection you've got over here." The color of party wear made him feel it was too much. He took his eyes off Elena's clothes and her. "Are you certain you're able to manage this amount?" It was a challenge, which customers in nearby checkout stands picked up on. Elena kept her hands folded calmly as she observed Raymond's openly insulting performance. She had encountered this kind of treatment in the past, different places, different decades, but casual cruelty always stung. As Raymond's register filled with palpable tension, a figure beside him materialized, seemingly out of thin air. Stephanie Owens, adorned in bright orange and with an air of authority about her. Her scrutiny of Elena's groceries was conducted with extreme disapproval, and she shook her head slowly as if a disaster had just happened. "Dear ma'am, I wanted to ask if you understand how expensive all this is going to be." Stephanie spoke to her like she was a confused kid, not a dignified old lady. "Perhaps it would be wise to return some of them. Perhaps you should begin with only the essentials." Stares were becoming directed at us. A few other shoppers who had ceased their own shopping and were instead watching this play out. Many people took out their mobile devices, feeling that something important was happening before them. However, they had yet to understand it entirely. Elena Barnes straightened her shoulders, her voice remaining steady despite the growing humiliation. "I'm quite capable of managing my own purchases, thank you." Her dignity in the face of such obvious disrespect only seemed to embolden Raymond Fletcher, who apparently interpreted her calm response as weakness rather than strength. "Look, lady, I've seen this before. People come in here thinking they can afford the good stuff. Then their cards get declined, and everyone has to wait while we void everything out. Maybe save yourself the embarrassment and shop somewhere more appropriate for your budget." Raymond's voice carried across the checkout area, ensuring that Elena's humiliation would be as public as possible. Every word, every expression, and every movement was captured on the security camera overhead. It did not just record what was said, it also recorded how the crowd was gathering. They were not outraged at the injustice being caused to Elena. They were just getting entertained. They made an undeniable record of cruelty against an innocent woman whose only crime was shopping and not looking like the usual customers of Sterling Market. Even though emotional turmoil brewed in her chest, Elena reached her hand into the pocket of her blue jacket slowly. Despite the judging looks and murmurs of the other customers, she did not lose her cool or let their prejudices get to her. She found the leather wallet she had been using for years in her overcoat and retrieved the money with the same elegance she had maintained all through. Raymond Fletcher watched her movements with evident skepticism, clearly expecting her payment method to be insufficient for the job. Taking a casual position against his register, he seemed to prepare himself for what he thought would serve as Elena's final straw for shopping above her apparent station. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the skylights above seemed to intensify as Elena prepared to open her wallet, the natural light combining with the fluorescent fixtures to create an almost spotlight effect that highlighted every detail of the moment. The other customers pressed closer, their phones ready to capture whatever embarrassment they expected to unfold, while Stephanie Owens crossed her arms with the satisfaction of someone who believed justice was about to be served. Elena Barnes looked up from her wallet, meeting Raymond Fletcher's smirking gaze with quiet strength, unaware that her ordeal was about to take a dramatic turn that none of the gathered spectators could possibly anticipate. Elena Barnes felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her as she stood at the checkout counter, her weathered hands gripping her blue jacket tighter around her simple dress. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across the faces gathering around her, transforming what should have been a routine shopping trip into a public spectacle. Raymond Fletcher's voice carried across the store as he held up one of her organic apples, examining it like evidence in a criminal trial. His short-sleeved uniform shirt stretched tight across his chest as he leaned forward with theatrical disgust. "Seriously, look at these prices. $12 for organic apples? Lady, you sure you can handle this kind of expense?" A woman donning a pricey red designer coat pushed through the small crowd that had begun to gather. Lorraine Whitfield's flawless fingers brazenly clutched a designer handbag worth as much as a month's rent. Her blonde locks swept into an elaborate updo which signified stature. Lorraine called, "Excuse me," having an entitled attitude. "I've been a customer at Sterling Market for a long 15 years, and I have to ask, what exactly is going on here? Why is someone like her allowed in a classy place like this?" The question hung in the air like poisonous gas, and Elena's chest tightened. She experienced discrimination prior, but never so publicly nor so callously calculated as this. Her deceased husband, James, would always say to her, "Keep your head held high." He believed one's dignity is something that cannot be taken away. Now more faces turned in her direction. She tried to remember what he said. "That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out," Raymond Fletcher said, emboldened by Lorraine's support. "She's got a cart full of premium items, but look at her. Does she really seem like Sterling Market's target demographic?" A young man in expensive athletic wear pulled out his phone, angling it toward Elena with barely concealed excitement. Within seconds, 2 other customers had their devices out, expecting to capture some kind of viral moment that would entertain their social media followers. Stephanie Owens appeared beside Raymond, her orange company shirt bright under the overhead lighting. The supervisor's face wore an expression of practiced authority mixed with obvious disdain. She surveyed Elena from head to toe, taking in every detail of her modest appearance with judgmental eyes. "Ma'am," Stephanie said, with a tone that indicated her false politeness masked deep condescension, "I think you are confused here. Have you thought perhaps Sterling Market isn't for you, that it won't fit your needs? Just a few miles away, there are several discount grocery stores which may be more up your alley." Elena's voice quivered a bit as she replied, but forcing herself to state clearly, "I have every right to shop here. I am a paying customer, and I have done nothing wrong." Nothing wrong? Stop wasting my time with things you probably can't afford, lady. Raymond Fletcher chuckled harshly. It feels humiliating for all of us. The commotion was almost like a moth to flame that drew a crowd. A middle-aged woman was overheard telling her friend that some people do not know the place they are in. An older man shook his head, though it was uncertain whether he disapproved of Elena or the situation itself. After some time, the store manager, Douglas Perry, surfaced from customer service. His green polo shirt and anxious demeanor immediately indicated that he had been pushed into it by the company for social reasons. He walked toward the gathering crowd with obvious reluctance, glancing back and forth from Elena to the customers around her. "What seems to be the issue here?" Douglas asked, though his tone suggested he had already made up his mind about who was causing the problem. "The issue," Lorraine Whitfield declared, stepping forward like a prosecutor making her case, "is that this establishment has standards. When you allow just anyone to shop here, it diminishes the experience for your actual customers. Those of us who've been loyal to Sterling Market deserve better than this." Douglas Perry's face flushed red as he struggled with his response. Company policy clearly stated that all customers should be treated with respect, but the pressure from the crowd was palpable. These were wealthy customers, the kind who spent thousands of dollars monthly, and whose complaints could reach corporate executives within hours. "Well, Douglas stammered. "Maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone involved." Security guard Raymond Kim stood near the store entrance, watching the scene unfold with obvious discomfort. His muscular frame was tense, his hand resting near his radio, but he made no move to intervene. The Asian American guard had seen situations like this before and knew that challenging wealthy customers often led to complaints that could cost him his job. Raymond Fletcher sensed the momentum shifting in his favor and pressed his advantage. "Look, I'm just trying to do my job here, but let's be realistic. She's probably planning to pay with food stamps or some kind of government assistance. Worse yet, that credit card might not even be hers." Elena felt as if she was hit with a punch. In all her 73 years, she had never stolen, never failed to pay her debts, and never given anyone reason to suspect her honesty. She felt her hands start to shake when she reached for her purse, as the crowd pressed in on her like a living thing. "Such a grave accusation," Elena said in a low tone, dignified under the situation. "Throughout my life, I worked hard and have raised my son to be a good man. And I have not taken anything that does not belong to me." "Yes, okay," shrugged Raymond Fletcher. "They all say that. You talk a good talk, but your actions are disrupting my store and making other customers uncomfortable." Stephanie Owens folded her arms and edged closer, her tone becoming menacing. "I'm going to need to ask you to leave on your own accord, ma'am. Otherwise, I'm going to have to call the cops on you. We have the right to refuse service to anyone, which you clearly are causing a disturbance." Elena's voice was wavering for the first time, as captured by the phones recording the scene. "I only want to get groceries, people. I'm not invading your space or causing trouble. I only want to shop." Lorraine Whitfield laughed icy coldly. "Trying to shop like everybody else? Honey, look around. Everybody else belongs here." The Sterling Market corporate headquarters, 23 miles away, in the executive offices, Marcus Barnes sat behind his mahogany desk, watching footage from various stores. The entrepreneur was in a green business shirt with his blue jacket hanging over the chair, in readiness for any meetings in the afternoon. His muscular body indicated that he trained at dawn to relieve the stress of running a multi-million-dollar grocery chain. The monitoring system brought up feeds of 12 stores at once. Marcus could scan them for customer flow, employee performance, and so on. He made a habit early on in his career of wanting to know everything about his business. People who lead had to crawl before they walk. He glanced indifferently across the monitors until something on the third monitor piqued his interest. Checkout Lane 4 at the Sterling Market location in Riverside Heights had drawn a crowd. Marcus leaned in, changing the camera angle so that he could get a better view. It looked like a customer service issue. The picture became clearer. A jolt of fear coursed through Marcus, freezing his blood. In the midst of hostile faces was his mother, standing proud and dignified. Elena Barnes was the woman who had sacrificed a great deal to raise him, who had taken on double shifts to pay for his college education, who had instilled in him every meaningful value that had made his success possible. Yet tonight, right now, in his own store, his mother was being embarrassed. Marcus watched in growing horror as Raymond Fletcher gestured dismissively at Elena, as Stephanie Owens threatened her with police action, as Lorraine Whitfield recorded the scene with obvious glee. He saw Douglas Perry's failure to intervene decisively, Raymond Kim's cowardly passivity, and the crowd of customers treating his mother's dignity like entertainment for their phones. His hands clenched into fists as Raymond Fletcher made another accusation about stolen credit cards. Marcus had built his entire business empire on the foundation of respect and integrity his mother had taught him, and now he was watching her be treated like a criminal in his own establishment. "That's enough," Marcus growled, snatching up his keys and jacket. Back in the store, Elena Barnes was subject to the worst right now. The influx of customers was beyond anything she had ever experienced before. More and more people were joining the people who were pointing and whispering ridicule. Her legs were giving way under her in what felt like a panic-induced stupor. Heart thudding in her chest, she even thought of simply leaving her groceries behind and walking out of there and retreating to her small home. But then she remembered James's words. Her late husband, who always spoke about dignity and strength. Then she thought about Marcus, her son, who was somewhere across the city making the same life she had made possible through her sacrifices. They will not break her, not today, not ever. Marcus raced out of the door of the corporate building, his pricey shoes pain on the pavement as he went to his BMW. The Riverside Heights drive would regularly take 20 minutes in the afternoon traffic, but he planned to do it in 15. Nothing would deter him from reaching his mother's side. She was his everything in the world. Elena Barnes had endured enough. It was time for all those who participated in her humiliation to face the music. Every one of them would learn that for bullies, there is a reckoning. The storm was approaching, and justice was finally on its way. Marcus Barnes gripped the steering wheel of his black Mercedes, his knuckles white with tension as he weaved through afternoon traffic. His green business shirt was already damp with perspiration, and his blue jacket felt constricting around his muscular frame. The Bluetooth connection crackled to life as his assistant Vanessa Caldwell answered on the first ring. "Vanessa, I need you to pull every employee record for the Sterling Market on 5th Avenue immediately," Marcus commanded, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Focus on Raymond Fletcher, cashier, and Stephanie Owens, floor supervisor. I want their employment histories, performance reviews, disciplinary actions, everything." "Of course, Mr. Barnes. Is there a problem at the location?" Vanessa's professional tone carried a note of concern. "There's about to be," Marcus replied grimly. "Also prepare termination paperwork for both employees. Multiple violations of company policy, discrimination, harassment. I want them legally bulletproof because this is going to make waves." As Marcus accelerated through a yellow light, his mind raced back to memories that made his current fury even more intense. He could see his mother Elena 30 years ago, her hands raw from working double shifts at the textile factory, coming home at midnight only to wake at 5 a.m. for her second job cleaning office buildings. Even then, she wore her dignity like armor, her back straight despite exhaustion, her blue work jacket always clean and pressed no matter how worn it became. Elena Barnes had raised him alone after his father died when Marcus was 12, and she never once complained about the burden. Instead, she poured everything into ensuring her son had opportunities she never had. Marcus remembered sitting at their tiny kitchen table, watching his mother count and recount the bills, stretching every dollar to cover rent, groceries, and his school supplies. "Education is your ticket out of here, baby," she would tell him, her voice steady despite the worry lines deepening around her eyes. "You study hard, you work honest, and you treat people right. That's how you build something real." Those words had driven Marcus through high school, college, and business school. While other students partied or complained about the workload, Marcus remembered his mother's sacrifices and pushed harder. He started with a single-corner grocery store, working 18-hour days, applying every lesson Elena had taught him about treating customers with respect and dignity. Now, 23 stores later, Marcus Barnes employed over 2,000 people across the state. His grocery empire generated millions in revenue annually. But he never forgot the values instilled by a woman who cleaned floors so her son could dream bigger. Back at Sterling Market, those dreams felt like mockery as Raymond Fletcher's voice rose above the store's ambient noise. The young cashier, emboldened by the crowd's ugly energy, leaned across his register with a sneer that made several customers uncomfortable. "Look, lady, I'm being real patient here, but you need to prove you can actually pay for this fancy food," Raymond declared, his short-sleeved uniform shirt stretched tight across his chest as he gestured dismissively at Elena's carefully selected items. "Empty that purse right here on the counter. Let's see what you're really working with." Elena Barnes felt something crack inside her chest, a sound like ice breaking on a frozen pond. In all her 74 years through poverty, widowhood, and countless struggles, no one had ever demanded she prove her worth like this. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her worn leather purse closer to her body. "I have the money to pay for my groceries," she said quietly, her voice barely audible above the growing murmur of the crowd. "I shouldn't have to prove anything to you." Stephanie Owens appeared beside Raymond, like a vulture sensing weakness, her orange company shirt vivid under the fluorescent lights. Her supervisor badge caught the overhead illumination as she crossed her arms and fixed Elena with a withering stare. "Ma'am, you're causing a disturbance now," Stephanie announced loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "If you can't comply with our cashier's reasonable request, I'm going to have to call additional security to resolve this situation." The word security sent a ripple through the gathering crowd, and phones began emerging from pockets and purses. Lorraine Whitfield, resplendent in her red designer outfit, held her iPhone high to capture the perfect angle of Elena's humiliation. "This is going straight on social media," Lorraine whispered to another customer, her voice carrying clearly to Elena's ears. "People need to see what happens when they try to shop above their station." Other customers began openly laughing and making comments that cut through Elena like physical blows. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit shook his head disapprovingly. Two women in matching tennis outfits whispered behind their hands while staring directly at Elena. Even customers who felt uncomfortable with the scene found themselves swept along by the crowd's ugly momentum. Elena's mind drifted to her late husband Robert, who had passed 15 years ago after 43 years of marriage. Robert used to tell her that she had the strongest backbone of anyone he'd ever known, that she could face down any storm with grace and dignity intact. But standing here, surrounded by hostile faces and mocking laughter, Elena wondered if Robert had been wrong about her strength. Maybe she didn't belong in this upscale store with its gleaming floors and gourmet selections. Maybe Raymond Fletcher was right to question her presence here. The doubt crept in like poison, making her shoulders sag slightly under her blue jacket. Miles away, Marcus Barnes ran a red light as Vanessa's voice crackled through the speaker with updates. "Mr. Barnes, I've pulled those employee files. Raymond Fletcher has 2 previous customer complaints for unprofessional behavior that were dismissed by store management. Stephanie Owens has been written up for discriminatory language toward customers but received only verbal warnings." Marcus's jaw clenched so hard it ached. His own company, built on his mother's principles of respect and dignity, had been harboring and enabling exactly the kind of behavior Elena was enduring right now. The betrayal felt personal and professional simultaneously. "Have legal review those complaint files immediately," Marcus ordered. "I want to know why serious issues were dismissed and who made those decisions. This rot goes deeper than two bad employees." The traffic light ahead turned red, but Marcus barely slowed down, his mind consumed with getting to his mother. He thought about Elena's quiet pride, the way she had always carried herself with dignity, even when bill collectors called or creditors threatened. She had taught him that respect was something you gave freely to others, not something you demanded for yourself. At Sterling Market, Elena's worst moment was approaching as Raymond Fletcher grew more aggressive in his demands. "I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling you," Raymond declared, slapping his hand on the counter. "Either you dump that purse out right here, or we're calling the police to sort this out. Because honestly, you look like someone who might be using stolen cards or fake checks." The accusation hit Elena like a physical blow. In her peripheral vision, she could see Lorraine Whitfield adjusting her phone angle to capture Elena's reaction. The red light on the device indicated she was recording, documenting this moment of humiliation for the entertainment of strangers online. Elena thought about her late husband again, about their modest but honest life together, about the values they had instilled in their son. She wondered if she had somehow failed, if she deserved this treatment because of something she had done or failed to do. For the first time since entering Sterling Market, Elena Barnes felt truly alone. Meanwhile, Marcus Barnes pulled into the Sterling Market parking lot with his tires squealing against the asphalt. Through the large plate glass windows, he could see a crowd gathered around the checkout area, their body language suggesting conflict and excitement. Even from this distance, he could make out his mother's familiar blue jacket at the center of the disturbance. Marcus sat in his car for exactly 3 seconds, watching strangers mock and humiliate the woman who had sacrificed everything for his success. His hands shook with rage as he saw phones pointing in Elena's direction, capturing her pain for the amusement of others. The anger that filled Marcus Barnes in that moment was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was the fury of a successful man watching his mother suffer. It was the rage of a son who understood exactly how much Elena had endured to give him the opportunities that led to this very parking lot, this very moment. Marcus Barnes opened his car door and stepped into the afternoon sun, his green business shirt and blue jacket marking him as someone important even before anyone knew his identity. His muscular frame moved with purpose toward the store entrance, every step bringing him closer to a confrontation that would change Sterling Market forever. Inside the store, Elena Barnes faced her darkest moment, unaware that help was 30 seconds away. The automatic doors of Sterling Market slid open with a soft whoosh, and Marcus Barnes stepped into the fluorescent-lit store with the measured pace of a man who owned every inch of the polished floor beneath his feet. His muscular frame filled out his tailored green business shirt perfectly, the expensive fabric catching the overhead lighting as he moved. The blue jacket draped over his arm spoke of quality and success, from its impeccable cut to the subtle designer details that marked it as costing more than most people's monthly salary. But none of the staff bustling about their afternoon duties recognized the man who signed their paychecks. Marcus's dark eyes swept across the familiar layout of produce displays and promotional end caps, taking in every detail with the practiced assessment of someone who had built an empire one store at a time. The natural skylight streaming through the large windows mixed with the bright fluorescent fixtures above, creating the welcoming atmosphere he had specifically designed for his customers. Every element had been carefully planned, from the wide aisles to the premium product placement, all intended to make shopping a pleasant experience for people from every walk of life. What he saw unfolding near Register 3 made his jaw clench with barely controlled rage. His mother stood with her shoulders squared and her chin raised, still maintaining the dignity that had carried her through decades of struggle and sacrifice. Her blue jacket was neat and pressed, her simple dress modest but respectable, her gray hair styled with the same care she had always taken in her appearance. She looked exactly like what she was, a refined, intelligent woman who deserved to be treated with respect and courtesy. Instead, she was surrounded by a growing crowd of hostile faces, their expressions ranging from amused disdain to outright contempt. Raymond Fletcher stood behind his register like a king holding court, his short-sleeved uniform shirt wrinkled and stained from his shift, his name tag catching the light as he gestured dismissively at Elena. His voice carried clearly across the store, each word dripping with condescension and barely disguised hatred. "Ma'am, I'm telling you for the last time, this is a quality establishment. We cater to a certain clientele, and frankly, I don't think you understand the caliber of customer we serve here." Stephanie Owens hovered beside him in her orange company shirt, her supervisor badge glinting as she nodded in agreement. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest, her expression pinched with disapproval as she looked Elena up and down like she was examining something unpleasant. "Raymond is absolutely right. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the discount chains across town. They're more suited to your particular needs." Marcus felt his hands form fists at his sides, every muscle in his body tensing with the effort to maintain control. The woman these people were dismissing so cruelly was the same woman who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on their table when he was growing up. She had cleaned office buildings until her hands were raw, waited tables until her feet bled in her worn shoes, and taken in laundry for neighbors just to scrape together enough money for his school supplies. She was the woman who had taught him that success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from, who had instilled in him the values of hard work, integrity, and treating every person with dignity regardless of their circumstances. And these people, his employees, were treating her like garbage. Lorraine Whitfield stood nearby in her expensive red designer outfit, her perfectly manicured fingers holding her smartphone steady as she recorded the confrontation. Her laugh was sharp and ugly as she spoke, just loud enough to be heard by the growing crowd of onlookers. "This is exactly what's wrong with this country. These people think they can just go anywhere they want, demanding to be served like they belong in decent establishments." Other customers had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion like vultures circling carrion. Some held their own phones, capturing what they clearly expected to be entertaining content for their social media feeds. Their faces showed everything from cruel amusement to satisfied superiority, as if witnessing Elena's humiliation somehow validated their own worth. Security guard Raymond Kim stood at the edge of the crowd, his uniform crisp but his expression uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly sensing that the situation was wrong, but lacking the courage to intervene against the mob mentality that had taken hold. Store manager Douglas Perry lingered behind a nearby display, wringing his hands nervously, but making no move to step in and restore order. His company polo shirt bore the Sterling Market logo that Marcus had personally designed, but the man wearing it seemed to have forgotten everything the brand was supposed to represent. Marcus took a deep breath and began walking toward the confrontation, his expensive leather shoes silent on the polished floor. His approach was calm and measured, giving no hint of the fury burning in his chest or the storm that was about to break over everyone involved in his mother's torment. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man accustomed to being heard and obeyed. "What seems to be the problem here?" Raymond Fletcher barely glanced up from his register, his attention focused on shuffling Elena's items around dismissively. When he did look at Marcus, his expression was one of irritated dismissal, as if Marcus was just another inconvenience in his already complicated day. "Look, buddy, this doesn't concern you. We're trying to handle a situation here. And frankly, if you're going to cause trouble too, You might want to think about shopping somewhere else. This is a respectable establishment, and we don't need people coming in here causing scenes." The casual racism in Raymond's assumption that Marcus would also be unwelcome sent another surge of anger through the store owner's veins. But Marcus had learned long ago that the most devastating responses came not from explosive outbursts, but from calculated precision. "I see," Marcus said softly, his tone remaining perfectly polite. "And what exactly constitutes causing a scene? Shopping while black, perhaps?" Stephanie Owens stepped forward, her supervisor authority making her bolder than she should have been. Unlike Raymond, she had the intelligence to recognize that Marcus's expensive clothing and confident bearing suggested he might be someone of importance, but her bigotry overrode her caution. "Sir, I don't appreciate your implication. We run a professional operation here, and we treat all of our customers fairly. This particular individual has been disruptive and argumentative, and we're simply trying to maintain the pleasant shopping environment our regular customers expect." Marcus's eyes moved slowly from Stephanie to Raymond, then across the crowd of hostile faces surrounding his mother. Elena stood in the center of it all, still maintaining her composure despite the obvious pain in her eyes. She glanced at Marcus with polite curiosity, recognizing him as someone trying to help but not yet realizing who he was. The irony was bitter and perfect. His own mother didn't recognize him in his expensive business attire, while these people who claimed to know their clientele had no idea they were speaking to the man who owned the very ground they stood on. "I'd like to speak with your store manager," Marcus said, his voice still calm, but carrying an undertone that made Douglas Perry emerge reluctantly from behind his display. "I'm Douglas Perry, the store manager," Douglas said, extending a nervous hand that Marcus ignored completely. "Is there something I can help you with, sir?" Marcus looked Douglas up and down slowly, taking in every detail of the man's appearance and demeanor. This was the person he had entrusted with running one of his most profitable locations, the individual responsible for maintaining the standards and values that had built the Sterling Market brand. "Mr. Perry," Marcus said slowly, savoring the way the manager's eyes widened slightly at the formal address. "I'd like you to explain to me your store's policy regarding customer service and treatment of shoppers." Douglas swallowed hard, clearly sensing that this was some kind of test, but not understanding the stakes involved. "Well, sir, we pride ourselves on providing excellent service to all of our valued customers. We maintain high standards and work to create a welcoming environment for everyone who shops with us." "Everyone?" Marcus asked quietly. "Yes, sir. Everyone." Marcus nodded slowly, then turned back to Raymond Fletcher, who was watching the exchange with growing unease. The cashier's earlier arrogance was beginning to crack as he realized that the well-dressed man he had so casually dismissed was commanding respect from his manager. "And you, Mr. Fletcher, is it?" Marcus read the name from the cashier's badge, his voice carrying just enough emphasis to make it clear he was memorizing every detail. "You understand and follow these policies that Mr. Perry just described?" Raymond's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed nervously. "Yes, sir, of course. I always provide excellent customer service." "I see." Marcus's gaze moved slowly around the circle of faces, lingering on each person who had participated in or witnessed his mother's humiliation. Lorraine Whitfield still held her phone up, though her expression had shifted from amused anticipation to uncertain curiosity. "Mr. Fletcher," Marcus continued, his tone still conversational but somehow more intense, "I'm going to need your full name and employee identification number." The request hit Raymond like a physical blow. His face went pale, and for the first time since the confrontation had begun, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Employee identification numbers were only requested by corporate representatives or during formal disciplinary procedures. Why do you need that information?" Raymond stammered, his voice no longer carrying its earlier confidence. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered its prey. and was savoring the moment before striking. "Let's just say I'm conducting a customer service evaluation, Mr. Fletcher, and I'm very thorough in my reporting." The words hung in the air like a blade suspended over Raymond's head, sharp with implications he was only beginning to understand. Around the circle, other faces were showing the first signs of doubt and concern as they realized that something significant was happening, something that might have consequences none of them had anticipated. Elena Barnes watched it all with growing curiosity, still not recognizing her son but sensing that the tide was about to turn in ways that no one could predict. The reckoning was about to begin. The fluorescent lights cast their bright glow across Sterling Market as Marcus Barnes reached into the inner pocket of his blue jacket. His green business shirt was crisp and professional, but his eyes burned with controlled fury that had been building since he first witnessed his mother's humiliation through the security cameras. The entire store seemed to hold its breath as he withdrew a leather wallet, his movements deliberate and measured. Raymond Fletcher was still sneering, his short-sleeved uniform shirt wrinkled from his aggressive posturing. He had no idea that the next few seconds would destroy everything he thought he knew about power and privilege. Stephanie Owens stood beside him in her orange company shirt, arms crossed, still believing she held authority over the situation unfolding before her. "I asked you what seems to be the problem here," Marcus Barnes repeated, his voice carrying an undertone that made several customers step back instinctively. The authority in his tone was unmistakable, but Raymond Fletcher was too drunk on his own perceived power to recognize the danger. "Look, buddy, I told you to mind your own business," Raymond Fletcher snapped, jabbing a finger toward Marcus Barnes. "This woman doesn't belong in a store like this, and neither do you if you're going to cause trouble. Why don't you both head over to the discount mart where you belong?" Elena Barnes stood quietly, her blue jacket neat despite the ordeal she had endured. She watched the exchange with growing confusion, sensing something significant was about to happen, but unable to identify exactly what had shifted in the atmosphere. The dignified elderly woman had maintained her composure through 20 minutes of harassment, but now she felt an estranged sense of anticipation building in her chest. Marcus Barnes opened his wallet and withdrew a corporate identification card, holding it high enough for everyone to see. The plastic badge caught the overhead lighting, reflecting the Sterling Market logo prominently displayed across the top. His photograph was clearly visible next to bold text that read, "Marcus Barnes, Chief Executive Officer, Sterling Market Corporation." "My name is Marcus Barnes," he announced, his voice carrying clearly across the checkout area. "I am the owner and CEO of Sterling Market Corporation. This store and every Sterling Market location across the country belongs to me." The words hit the gathered crowd like a physical force. Raymond Fletcher's sneer evaporated instantly, replaced by an expression of pure terror as the blood drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. The arrogant cashier, who had spent the last 20 minutes tormenting Elena Barnes, suddenly looked like a child caught in the act of breaking something precious and irreplaceable. Stephanie Owens stumbled backward, her orange shirt suddenly seeming too bright under the fluorescent lights. Her face went white as she realized the magnitude of what had just been revealed. The supervisor, who had threatened to call police on Elena Barnes, now faced the man who could end her career with a single phone call. "Oh my God," whispered Lorraine Whitfield, her red designer outfit suddenly feeling like a costume. The wealthy customer, who had been filming and making racist comments, now held her phone with trembling hands, realizing she had recorded her own participation in discriminating against the mother of the most powerful man in the building. Douglas Perry, the store manager, appeared as if summoned by the commotion, his face already showing signs of panic as he processed the scene before him. He had heard Marcus Barnes announce his identity and now stood frozen, understanding that his failure to intervene earlier would have devastating consequences for his career. Elena Barnes felt her heart skip as recognition dawned across her weathered features. The surprise in her eyes was quickly replaced by overwhelming pride as she realized her son had witnessed her humiliation and come to her defense. Her boy, the child she had raised through poverty and struggle, now stood before her as a successful businessman, commanding the respect and fear of everyone who had treated her with contempt. "Son?" Elena Barnes whispered, her voice carrying a mixture of shock and deep maternal pride. Marcus Barnes turned toward his mother, his expression softening for a moment before hardening again as he addressed the crowd. "This remarkable woman is Elena Barnes. She is my mother. For the past 20 minutes I have watched through security cameras as your staff and customers have subjected her to the most appalling display of racism and discrimination I have ever witnessed." The silence in the store was deafening. Other shoppers who had gathered to watch the spectacle now found themselves part of a much larger reckoning than they had anticipated. The entertainment they had expected had transformed into a moment of judgment that would have lasting consequences for everyone involved. Raymond Fletcher finally found his voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. "Mr. Barnes, I didn't know. She didn't say anything about..." "She didn't say anything about what?" Marcus Barnes interrupted, his voice rising with controlled anger. "She didn't mention that she was related to me? Are you suggesting that her treatment would have been different if you had known who her son was? Are you telling me that a customer's right to dignity and respect in my store depends on their personal connections to management?" The young cashier's face crumpled as he realized every word he spoke was digging his grave deeper. His hands shook as he gripped the counter, the same hands that had pointed at Elena Barnes with such contempt just moments before. Stephanie Owens attempted damage control, her voice high and desperate. "Mr. Barnes, I was just about to step in and resolve the situation. I was monitoring everything and preparing to address the customer service issues. I would never tolerate discrimination in our store." Marcus Barnes turned his cold gaze toward the supervisor, and she visibly wilted under his stare. "Really? Because what I observed was you actively participating in the harassment. You suggested that my mother shop at discount stores. You threatened to call police because she dared to purchase organic produce in my establishment. You stood by while customers made racist comments and did nothing to protect a paying customer's dignity." The corporate CEO pulled out his cell phone and held it up so everyone could see. "I have been recording this entire conversation, just as I have recordings of everything that happened to my mother from multiple security camera angles. Every word, every gesture, every moment of cruelty has been documented." Lorraine Whitfield tried to slip away quietly, but Marcus Barnes's voice stopped her in her tracks. "Mrs. Whitfield, isn't it? I heard you questioning why people like her are allowed in upscale establishments. I watched you encourage other customers to film what you thought would be entertaining content for social media." The wealthy customer in her red outfit turned back reluctantly, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. I was just, it was a misunderstanding." "It was not a misunderstanding," Marcus Barnes replied firmly. "It was a deliberate choice to participate in public humiliation based on racial prejudice. You made assumptions about my mother's worth and dignity based solely on her appearance and race. Your behavior represents exactly the kind of toxic culture I have worked my entire career to eliminate from my businesses." Douglas Perry stepped forward nervously, wringing his hands as he attempted to salvage his position. "Mr. Barnes, I sincerely apologize for this incident. I was handling other customer service issues and didn't realize the situation had escalated to this level. I take full responsibility for my staff's actions, and I assure you this will never happen again." Marcus Barnes studied the store manager with the same intensity he might examine a failing quarterly report. "Mr. Perry, you were in this building while a customer was being systematically harassed and humiliated by your employees. You heard the commotion. You saw the crowd gathering. You chose not to investigate or intervene. That makes you equally responsible for what happened to my mother." The store manager's shoulders slumped as he realized his attempts at deflection were futile. He had been in charge during one of the worst customer service failures in Sterling Market history, and the victim was the CEO's mother. His career was effectively over. Security guard Raymond Kim approached hesitantly, his uniform crisp, but his demeanor sheepish. "Mr. Barnes, I want you to know that I was planning to step in if things got physical. I was monitoring the situation to ensure everyone's safety." "You were monitoring," Marcus Barnes repeated slowly. "You watched my mother being verbally abused and psychologically terrorized, and you monitored. You saw customers making racist comments and filming her humiliation, and you monitored. Tell me, Mr. Kim, at what point does monitoring become complicity?" The security guard had no answer. He stared at his shoes, understanding that his failure to act had been a choice that would haunt his career. Marcus Barnes moved through the crowd, his presence commanding absolute attention as he addressed each person who had participated in his mother's humiliation. The power dynamics that had seemed so fixed just minutes before had completely reversed. The people who had felt entitled to mock and dismiss Elena Barnes now cowered before her son's authority. "What happened here today represents everything I have fought against in building this company," Marcus Barnes declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. Sterling Market was founded on principles of respect, dignity, and equal treatment for all customers, regardless of their race, appearance, or economic status. What I witnessed today was a complete betrayal of those values. Elena Barnes watched her son with growing pride and amazement. The boy she had raised while working multiple jobs, the child she had supported through college and business school, now stood as a powerful advocate for justice and dignity. Her humiliation was transforming into vindication as she witnessed the strength and integrity she had tried to instill in him being demonstrated before everyone who had witnessed her mistreatment. "Every person involved in what happened to my mother today will face appropriate consequences," Marcus Barnes continued. "But more importantly, this incident will serve as a catalyst for systematic changes throughout the Sterling Market organization. We will implement new policies, provide additional training, and create accountability measures to ensure that what happened here never occurs in any of our locations again." The gathered crowd stood in stunned silence as Marcus Barnes approached his mother. His expression softened completely as he reached Elena Barnes, and the powerful CEO transformed back into a loving son who had witnessed his mother's pain and come to her defense. "Mom, I am so sorry you had to endure this," he said quietly, wrapping Elena Barnes in a gentle embrace. "Your strength and dignity in the face of such cruelty reminds me why I have always been proud to be your son." Elena Barnes hugged Marcus Barnes tightly, tears of relief and pride flowing freely down her cheeks. "I raised you right," she whispered, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "You turned out to be everything I hoped you would become." The embrace between mother and son provided a powerful contrast to the hatred and discrimination that had filled the store just minutes before. Here was love triumphing over prejudice, family bonds proving stronger than racial division, and dignity ultimately conquering cruelty. Marcus Barnes stepped back from his mother, but kept one hand on her shoulder, a protective gesture that demonstrated his commitment to her honor and safety. He surveyed the crowd once more, his gaze settling on each person who had participated in Elena Barnes's humiliation. "Effective immediately, there will be changes in personnel and policies at this location," he announced. "Mr. Fletcher, you are terminated. Your employment with Sterling Market Corporation is ended, and your personnel file will reflect termination for discriminatory conduct. Ms. Owens, you are also terminated and banned from all Sterling Market properties. Mr. Perry, we will discuss your future with the company in my office." The swift justice being delivered sent shockwaves through the gathered employees and customers. They were witnessing real consequences for discriminatory behavior. something many had never seen before in their professional or personal lives. "This is just the beginning," Marcus Barnes concluded, his arm still protectively around Elena Barnes's shoulders. "Sterling Market will become a model for how businesses should respond to discrimination and protect the dignity of all customers. What happened to my mother today will never happen again in any store that bears our name." As the chapter reached its conclusion, the transformation was complete. Elena Barnes stood vindicated and honored, her son's love and protection surrounding her like armor against the hatred she had endured. The people who had tormented her now faced the consequences of their choices, while a powerful message about justice and dignity resonated throughout the store and would soon spread far beyond its walls. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Market cast their bright glow across the scene as Marcus Barnes stood with his arm protectively around his mother's shoulders. The revelation of his identity had sent shockwaves through the store. But now came the moment everyone was waiting for. Justice would be swift, methodical, and absolute. Marcus turned his steely gaze toward Raymond Fletcher, who stood frozen behind the cash register, his short-sleeved uniform shirt now damp with perspiration. The cashier's earlier arrogance had evaporated completely, replaced by the terrifying realization that his world was about to crumble. "Raymond Fletcher," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that changed lives. "Employee number 4127. You've been with Sterling Market for 3 years, 2 months, and 15 days. Today is your last day." Raymond's face went pale as Marcus pulled out his phone and speed-dialed his assistant. "Vanessa, I need immediate termination paperwork for Raymond Fletcher at the downtown location. Grounds are discrimination, harassment, and conduct unbecoming of a Sterling Market employee. Make sure it's flagged for potential employers who call for references." "Please, Mr. Barnes," Raymond stammered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know she was your mother. I was just following protocol. I can explain." Marcus's expression hardened. "Protocol? Show me the Sterling Market protocol that instructs employees to humiliate customers based on their appearance. Show me where it says you should question someone's ability to pay before they've even reached the register." The store had fallen completely silent. Other customers and employees watched in fascination as the drama unfolded. Elena Barnes maintained her dignified composure, though her eyes held a mixture of pride and vindication as she watched her son handle the situation with the leadership skills she had helped nurture. "There is no such protocol," Marcus continued, his green business shirt and blue jacket making him look every inch the successful executive he was. "What you followed was your own prejudice and ignorance. Security will escort you out immediately, and you're banned from all Sterling Market properties nationwide." As if summoned by his words, 2 uniformed security officers appeared, not Raymond Kim, who stood nervously to the side, but corporate security Marcus had called during his frantic drive to the store. "Please remove Mr. Fletcher from the premises," Marcus instructed. "His access cards are already deactivated." The security officers moved toward Raymond, who looked around desperately for support, but found none. His fellow employees avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in their own tasks. "This isn't fair," Raymond protested as the officers took his arms. "She looked like she couldn't afford anything here. Anyone would have thought the same thing." Marcus stepped forward, his muscular frame imposing. "Anyone with your mindset, perhaps, but not anyone who works for me. Your comments about food stamps, stolen credit cards, and telling my mother she didn't belong here, every word was recorded by our security system." As Raymond was escorted toward the exit, Marcus turned his attention to Stephanie Owens. The supervisor in her orange company shirt stood near the customer service desk, visibly trembling as she realized her turn had come. "Stephanie Owens," Marcus said, consulting his phone where Vanessa had already sent him the employment files. 7 years with the company, promoted to supervisor 2 years ago. Congratulations, you've just set a record for the shortest supervisory career in Sterling Market history." "Mr. Barnes," I was about to intervene, Stephanie said desperately. "I was just assessing the situation. I never would have let it go too far." "You threatened to call the police on my mother," Marcus replied coldly. "You suggested she shop at discount stores. You stood by while your employee humiliated a customer and then actively participated in that humiliation. That's not assessment. That's leadership failure of the highest order." Elena Barnes watched quietly as her son delivered justice with surgical precision. She felt a deep sense of validation, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been judged unfairly based on their appearance or perceived social status. "Your supervisor credentials are revoked, effective immediately," Marcus continued. "You're terminated and banned from all Sterling Market locations. Don't expect a positive reference." Stephanie's face crumpled as the reality hit her. 7 years of employment, gone in an instant because she chose cruelty over kindness, prejudice over professionalism. Next, Marcus's attention shifted to Douglas Perry, the store manager who had failed to take decisive action when leadership was most needed. Douglas stood near the produce section, his face a mixture of shame and fear as he awaited his fate. "Douglas Perry," Marcus said, his voice slightly less harsh but still stern. 12 years with Sterling Market, store manager for 4 years. Generally positive reviews until today. Douglas stepped forward, his shoulders slumped. "Mr. Barnes, I know I should have acted sooner. I was trying to assess the situation, but I realize now that was wrong. There was no situation to assess. It was clear discrimination." "At least you recognize that," Marcus acknowledged. "But recognition after the fact doesn't undo the damage. You're demoted to assistant manager and transferred to our Riverside location. Consider it your final chance to prove you understand what leadership actually means." The demotion was severe, but Douglas nodded gratefully. He understood he was receiving mercy he probably didn't deserve. Marcus then turned to security guard Raymond Kim, who had remained conspicuously absent during the entire incident. The guard's muscular frame seemed diminished as he faced his employer's scrutiny. "Raymond Kim," Marcus said, "your job is to ensure all customers feel safe and protected in our stores. Where were you when my mother needed protection from harassment?" "I was monitoring other areas of the store," Raymond said weakly. "I didn't realize what was happening until it was almost over." "Our security protocols require guards to respond to any gathering of customers and employees," Marcus replied. "You chose not to intervene when you could have stopped this situation before it escalated. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay and will complete mandatory sensitivity training before returning to duty." Now Marcus turned to the customers who had participated in or encouraged the harassment. His eyes found Lorraine Whitfield, still clutching her phone in her red designer outfit, looking far less confident than she had moments earlier. "Lorraine Whitfield," Marcus said, somehow having obtained her name from store records of her loyalty card. "You filmed my mother's humiliation for your entertainment. You made racist comments about people like her not belonging in upscale establishments. You're banned from all Sterling Market locations immediately." "You can't do that," Lorraine protested. "I'm a paying customer. I spend thousands of dollars here every month." "You were a paying customer," Marcus corrected. "Now you're a person who chose to participate in racial harassment rather than show basic human decency. Your money isn't worth more than my customer's dignity." He gestured to the security officers. "Please take photos of Ms. Whitfield and the other customers who participated in the harassment. Distribute them to all Sterling Market locations with instructions that they're permanently banned." The other customers who had laughed or made comments began backing away, suddenly very interested in examining products on distant shelves. But Marcus wasn't finished. "Before anyone leaves," he announced loudly enough for the entire store to hear, "I want to make something absolutely clear. The woman you saw humiliated today is Elena Barnes. She's my mother. Yes, but more importantly, she's a human being who deserves the same respect as every other customer who walks through our doors." The store remained silent as Marcus continued, Some of you filmed this incident expecting entertainment. Others made comments or laughed along. You turned a place of business into a venue for cruelty. That ends today." He walked to the customer service counter and picked up the store's intercom microphone. His voice echoed through every aisle and department of the large store. "Attention all Sterling Market employees and customers. This is Marcus Barnes, owner of the Sterling Market chain. What happened here today represents everything our company stands against. Sterling Market's values include respect and dignity for all customers regardless of race, appearance, economic status, or any other factor." Elena Barnes felt tears of pride welling in her eyes as she listened to her son address the store. This was the boy she had raised, the young man whose character she had helped shape through years of teaching him right from wrong. "Effective immediately," Marcus continued over the intercom, "we are implementing new anti-discrimination policies company-wide. Every employee will undergo mandatory sensitivity training. We're establishing a customer respect initiative that will ensure incidents like today's never happen again." He paused, his voice taking on a more personal tone. "This initiative will be called the Elena Barnes Dignity Program, named after a woman who showed grace and strength in the face of inexcusable treatment. It will remind us all that every customer who enters our stores deserves to be treated with respect and kindness." As Marcus hung up the intercom, murmurs of conversation began throughout the store. Some employees looked ashamed. Others appeared relieved that leadership had taken decisive action. Customers whispered among themselves, many expressing support for the changes. Through the large windows facing the parking lot, Marcus noticed news vans beginning to arrive. Word of the confrontation was spreading quickly through social media and local networks. "Looks like we're about to have more company," Marcus said to Elena Barnes, nodding toward the gathering media presence. As if on cue, the store's automatic doors opened, and reporter Monica Sellers entered with her camera crew. She was a respected local journalist, known for covering social justice issues with both sensitivity and thoroughness. Behind her walked Reverend Curtis Baldwin, a prominent community leader who had known Elena Barnes through church and neighborhood activities for many years. His presence added another layer of community support to the unfolding story. "Mrs. Barnes," Reverend Baldwin said warmly, approaching Elena with open arms, "I heard what happened here, and I had to come show my support. You handled this situation with the grace and dignity you've always shown." "Thank you, Reverend Baldwin," Elena replied, embracing him. "It's been quite an afternoon." Reporter Monica Sellers approached respectfully, her red blazer identifying her professional status, while her demeanor remained appropriately solemn given the circumstances. "Mrs. Barnes, I'm Monica Sellers from Channel 7 News. Would you be willing to share your experience with our viewers? I think your story could help others who faced similar treatment." Elena looked at her son, who nodded encouragingly. She had always taught him that speaking up against injustice was not only a right, but a responsibility. "I'd be honored to share my story," Elena said with quiet dignity. "If it helps even one person understand that discrimination hurts real people with real feelings, then something good will come from this difficult experience." As the camera crew set up for interviews, Marcus surveyed the transformed atmosphere of his store. Employees were treating customers with noticeably more attention and respect. Conversations were quieter, more courteous. The toxic culture that had allowed Elena Barnes's humiliation was already beginning to change. The systematic justice he had delivered would serve as a powerful message throughout the Sterling Market organization and the broader community. Actions had consequences. Discrimination would not be tolerated. Every customer mattered. Standing beside his mother as she prepared for her interview, Marcus felt a deep sense of pride, not just in his business success, but in the values Elena Barnes had instilled in him. Today, those values had transformed a moment of cruelty into an opportunity for lasting positive change. The bright fluorescent lights and natural skylights of Sterling Market now illuminated not just a store, but a symbol of hope for dignity triumphing over prejudice. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Channel 7's newsroom as producer Janet Mills reviewed the overnight social media analytics with growing amazement. What had started as Lorraine Whitfield's attempt to create viral entertainment had exploded into something far more powerful than anyone could have anticipated. The hashtag Justice for Elena was trending nationwide, with over 2 million posts in less than 18 hours. Lorraine Whitfield sat in her red silk blouse and designer black pants at her marble kitchen counter, staring at her phone screen in horror. The video she had posted expecting praise and validation had become a lightning rod for condemnation. Comment after comment flooded in, not mocking Elena Barnes as Lorraine had anticipated, but celebrating the elderly woman's dignity and grace while condemning Lorraine's cruel behavior. "This woman is absolutely disgusting," read one comment with 15,000 likes. "Look how she's treating this sweet lady who did nothing wrong." Another viral reply stated, "Elena Barnes showed more class in 5 minutes than this woman has in her entire life." The shares climbed past 50,000 as people added their own commentary praising Elena Barnes and Marcus Barnes, while expressing disgust at the discrimination they had witnessed. Lorraine's social media accounts, once filled with flattering comments from her wealthy social circle, now overflowed with criticism from people across the country who had seen her true character revealed. At Sterling Market's corporate headquarters, Vanessa Caldwell fielded call after call from news outlets, business partners, and community organizations. The green blouse under her blue blazer was already wrinkled from the intensity of the morning's media attention. Marcus Barnes had asked her to coordinate all interview requests, while he focused on implementing the systematic changes he had promised. "Channel 12 wants an exclusive with Mr. Barnes," she reported to him during their emergency morning briefing. "The Chamber of Commerce is asking him to speak at their diversity summit next month, and we've received over 300 applications from people wanting to work at Sterling Market locations since yesterday." Marcus Barnes, wearing his signature green shirt and blue jacket, reviewed the flood of positive responses with satisfaction mixed with determination. The viral attention validated his swift action, but he knew the real work was just beginning. Transforming corporate culture required more than a single dramatic moment, no matter how powerful. Across town at the Channel 7 studios, reporter Monica Sellers prepared for what she knew would be the most important interview of her career. She had covered countless stories of discrimination and injustice, but something about Elena Barnes' quiet dignity and her son's principled response had captured public imagination in unprecedented ways. Elena Barnes arrived at the studio wearing her blue jacket over a simple navy dress, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her posture radiating the same composed strength that had made her video appearance so compelling. Despite the chaos surrounding her story, she moved with unhurried grace, greeting each staff member with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Barnes," Monica Sellers began as cameras rolled under the bright fluorescent studio lights, "your experience at Sterling Market has resonated with millions of people. What do you want them to understand about what happened that day?" Elena Barnes looked directly into the camera, her voice steady and clear. "I want people to know that dignity isn't something others can take from you. It's something you carry within yourself. What happened to me happens to countless people every day, and most of them don't have a son who owns the company to come to their rescue." The interview continued for 30 minutes, with Elena Barnes speaking eloquently about the importance of treating every person with basic human respect, regardless of their appearance, age, or perceived social status. When Monica Sellers asked about her son's dramatic intervention, Elena Barnes smiled with obvious pride, but quickly redirected the focus. "Marcus learned his values from watching how people treated others when they thought no one important was watching. The real heroes are the people who speak up when they see injustice, even when they have nothing to gain from it. The real victory belongs to everyone who refuses to accept discrimination as normal." Her words were clipped and shared millions of times before the interview even finished airing. Social media exploded with people sharing their own experiences of discrimination and celebrating examples of others who had intervened in similar situations. The movement had grown far beyond Sterling Market or even Elena Barnes herself. At Sterling Market locations across the state, managers reported unprecedented increases in customer traffic. People drove from neighboring towns specifically to shop at stores owned by the company that had taken such a strong public stance against racism. Lines stretched around parking lots as customers waited to support a business that had demonstrated genuine commitment to treating all people with dignity. Regional Manager David Chen, wearing his orange company polo and khaki pants, called the corporate office to report that his location had served more customers in one day than they typically saw in a week. "People are coming in just to tell staff they appreciate what Mr. Barnes did," he explained to Vanessa Caldwell. "They're buying groceries, but they're also taking pictures with our employees and posting about how proud they are to support Sterling Market." The employee response proved equally dramatic. Workers across all locations reported feeling genuinely proud to wear their Sterling Market uniforms for the first time in years. The company's strong stance against discrimination had transformed their workplace from just another retail job into a position with meaning and dignity. Former employee testimonials began appearing online as current and past Sterling Market workers shared their experiences with the company's evolving culture. Many praised Marcus Barnes's leadership and described how his mother's treatment had crystallized feelings they had harbored about the importance of respect in the workplace. Community leaders throughout the region praised the incident as a model for how businesses should respond to discriminatory behavior. Reverend Curtis Baldwin, wearing his traditional black suit with white collar under the natural skylight of his church office, recorded a video message that was shared thousands of times. "What we witnessed at Sterling Market shows us what real leadership looks like," he stated directly to the camera. When Marcus Barnes saw injustice, he didn't make excuses or minimize the problem. He took immediate action and implemented real consequences. This is how change happens, one principled decision at a time. The business community took notice as well. Other retail chains began reviewing their own policies and training programs, with several announcing new initiatives specifically inspired by the Sterling Market incident. The ripple effects extended far beyond grocery stores, as companies across various industries recognized the public's demand for genuine commitment to equality and respect. 3 days after the incident, Marcus Barnes held a press conference in the bright afternoon light, streaming through Sterling Market's renovated community meeting room. Reporters packed the space as he announced the Elena Barnes Dignity Initiative, a comprehensive program that would be implemented across all company locations. "This initiative goes beyond basic customer service training," Marcus Barnes explained to the assembled media. "We're creating a culture where every person who enters our stores knows they will be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or economic circumstances." The program included mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, revised hiring practices that emphasized character and empathy, and a customer feedback system that would allow immediate reporting of any discriminatory behavior. Most significantly, Marcus Barnes announced that each store would display a commitment statement bearing his mother's name, pledging to honor the values of dignity and respect that she represented. The announcement generated another wave of positive coverage as business analysts praised the initiative's comprehensive approach to cultural change. Stock prices for the privately held company reached all-time highs based on investor confidence in Marcus Barnes's leadership and the company's demonstrated values. Social media continued buzzing with support as people shared stories of positive experiences they had witnessed or participated in since Elena Barnes's story went viral. Teachers reported students discussing dignity and respect in classrooms. Parents described conversations with children about treating all people with kindness. The hashtag Justice for Elena evolved into hashtag Dignity for All as the movement expanded beyond the original incident. Lorraine Whitfield found herself completely ostracized from her former social circle as friends and acquaintances distanced themselves from her documented behavior. Country club memberships were quietly revoked, charity board positions disappeared, and invitations stopped arriving. Her attempt to create viral entertainment had instead created lasting consequences for her own reputation and social standing. Meanwhile, Elena Barnes received hundreds of speaking invitations from schools, churches, and community organizations wanting to hear her message about dignity and respect. She accepted several, always wearing her blue jacket and always emphasizing that real change happened through individual choices to treat others with kindness. The Sterling Market location, where the incident occurred, became an unofficial pilgrimage site as people traveled from across the country to shop where Elena Barnes had demonstrated such grace under pressure. Store manager Douglas Perry, now successfully leading with the inclusive approach that had saved his career, reported that customers regularly asked to see where the confrontation had taken place. As the week concluded, social media analytics showed that hashtag Justice for Elena had generated over 50 million interactions worldwide. News outlets in 12 countries had covered the story, with many highlighting it as an example of how swift, principled action could create positive change in response to discrimination. The community response had transformed a single moment of injustice into a nationwide conversation about dignity, respect, and the responsibility to intervene when witnessing discrimination. Elena Barnes had become more than a victim who received justice. She had become a symbol of grace under pressure and the power of maintaining one's dignity in the face of cruelty. The viral movement continued growing as people realized that Elena Barnes's experience represented something much larger than one incident at one store. It represented the choice between accepting discrimination as inevitable or demanding that every person be treated with basic human dignity and respect. The morning sun streamed through the crystal-clear windows of Sterling Market, casting golden rays across polished floors that gleamed under the bright fluorescent lights. 6 months had passed since that fateful afternoon when Elena Barnes faced humiliation in these very aisles, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Elena Barnes stood at the podium in the store's community room, her red dress catching the natural skylight as she addressed a gathering of retail executives from across the nation. Her voice carried the same quiet strength that had sustained her through that terrible day, but now it resonated with the authority of someone whose dignity had sparked a movement. "Respect isn't something you earn based on your clothes or your bank account," Elena said, her words carrying to every corner of the packed room. "It's something every human being deserves simply by walking through your doors. When you forget that, you don't just harm one person, you poison the entire community." The audience hung on every word. These executives had come from chains spanning coast to coast, all seeking to implement what was now known as the Elena Barnes Dignity Initiative. What had begun as one mother's quiet strength in the face of cruelty had become a nationwide standard for inclusive customer service. Marcus Barnes watched from the back of the room, his green business shirt and blue jacket impeccable as always, but his expression soft with pride. He remembered the frantic drive to this store 6 months ago, the rage that had consumed him as he witnessed his mother's treatment. Now he watched her transform that pain into purpose, turning a moment of darkness into a beacon of light for others. In the front row sat Douglas Perry, the former manager who had failed so spectacularly that day. He wore his new store uniform with quiet dignity, having completed his probation period and earned his way back into management at another location. His rehabilitation had been genuine, his commitment to change real. Just last week, he'd intervened when he witnessed a customer making inappropriate comments about a Latino family, ensuring they felt welcome and respected. "Mr. Perry has shown us something important," Elena continued, gesturing toward him. People can change, institutions can change, but only when we hold ourselves accountable and choose to do better every single day. The presentation concluded to thunderous applause, but the real celebration was just beginning. Outside the community room, the store bustled with its usual afternoon activity. But everything was different now. Customers of all backgrounds moved through the aisles with ease, greeted warmly by staff who understood that every interaction mattered. Near the entrance, a bronze plaque caught the afternoon light. The inscription read, "In honor of Elena Barnes, who reminded us that dignity is not negotiable and respect is not optional. Her grace under pressure became our guiding light." Below it, the store's new mission statement: every customer, every visit, every moment matters. Raymond Kim adjusted his security uniform as he approached a teenage customer who seemed confused about store layout. The young man appeared nervous, probably worried about being followed or watched with suspicion. 6 months ago, Raymond might have done exactly that. Today he walked over with a genuine smile. "Can I help you find something?" Raymond asked warmly. The teenager's face brightened with relief, and they walked together toward the electronics section, chatting easily about phone accessories and gaming equipment. Raymond's transformation had been profound. The mandatory sensitivity training had opened his eyes to his own unconscious biases. But more than that, Elena's example had shown him what real strength looked like. He'd become the store's most vocal advocate for intervention when conflicts arose, understanding now that silence in the face of discrimination was complicity. Across town, in a cramped apartment that smelled of desperation and regret, Raymond Fletcher scrolled through job listings on his outdated laptop. His savings had run out months ago. Every application he submitted seemed to disappear into the void. And when he did get callbacks, the interviews never led to offers. The incident at Sterling Market followed him everywhere. The video had gone viral, his face clearly visible as he berated Elena Barnes. Potential employers found it easily, and his name had become synonymous with workplace discrimination. He'd tried moving to different cities, changing his appearance, but the internet was forever, and his actions had consequences that stretched far beyond that one afternoon. He'd applied for minimum wage positions at gas stations and fast food restaurants, but even they turned him away. The lesson was clear: in a connected world, treating people with cruelty and disrespect could destroy your future in ways you never imagined. Stephanie Owens faced similar struggles. Her supervisor credentials had been revoked, and her behavior that day had been dissected in business schools as an example of how quickly toxic management could destroy a company's reputation. She'd started working at a small boutique in another state, keeping her head down and her mouth shut, finally understanding the weight of the power she'd abused. Back at Sterling Market, the transformation extended far beyond individual redemption stories. The store had become a model for inclusive retail practices, hosting monthly community events and providing space for local organizations to meet and thrive. Sales had increased dramatically as customers specifically chose to shop where they felt respected and valued. Vanessa Caldwell, Marcus's corporate assistant, had spent months documenting and refining the Dignity Initiative protocols. Her comprehensive training programs were now being licensed to retailers nationwide, creating a sustainable revenue stream that funded community outreach programs in Elena's name. The program's success had attracted attention from civil rights organizations, business schools, and media outlets around the world. Elena had been invited to speak at Harvard Business School, the NAACP National Convention, and a United Nations Forum on Dignity in Commerce. Each appearance reinforced the simple truth she'd always known: treating people with respect wasn't complicated, but it required choosing to see the humanity in everyone who walked through your doors. As afternoon shifted toward evening, the store began preparing for its anniversary celebration. Banners hung from the ceiling, and a red ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new Community Outreach Center, built in the space that had once housed administrative offices. Community leader Reverend Curtis Baldwin arrived early, greeting Elena with the warmth reserved for old friends. Their bond had strengthened over the months as they worked together on various initiatives, turning Elena's experience into a catalyst for broader social change. "This day belongs to you," he told her, adjusting the microphone at the outdoor podium where she would address the crowd. "No," Elena replied gently, smoothing her red dress as she watched families arriving for the celebration. "This day belongs to everyone who refused to let hatred win." The crowd grew steadily as evening approached. Former customers who had witnessed the original incident came to celebrate the transformation. Community members who had never set foot in the store before came to see what authentic change looked like. Local business owners came to understand how treating customers with dignity could actually improve their bottom line. Reporter Monica Sellers moved through the crowd with her camera crew, documenting the celebration, but also the deeper story of how one woman's grace had rippled outward to create lasting change. Her original coverage had helped the story go viral, but tonight's segment would focus on the power of turning pain into progress. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Elena Barnes stepped to the podium. The natural light caught the silver in her hair, and the bright overhead lights illuminated her face as she looked out at the diverse crowd gathered to celebrate not just a store's anniversary, but a community's commitment to doing better. 6 months ago, I walked into this store as just another customer, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. I left as someone who had been reminded that dignity isn't something others give you. It's something you carry within yourself, something that can't be taken away, no matter how people treat you. The crowd listened in complete silence, many wiping away tears as they remembered the viral video and the grace Elena had shown throughout her ordeal. "But tonight isn't about what happened to me," Elena continued. "It's about what we chose to do next. We could have let bitterness poison us. Instead, we chose to plant seeds of change. Look around you. Look at this community that refused to accept discrimination as normal. This is what progress looks like." Marcus Barnes joined his mother on stage, carrying oversized scissors for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As they stood together, mother and son, their bond was visible to everyone present. His success meant nothing if it wasn't grounded in the values she had taught him. Her dignity shone brightest when reflected in the changes he had implemented. Together they cut the red ribbon, officially opening the Elena Barnes Community Outreach Center. The crowd erupted in applause as the doors opened to reveal a space designed for education, support services, and community building. Inside the center, children's artwork covered bulletin boards, job training schedules filled calendars, and comfortable seating areas invited conversation and connection. This was Elena's true victory, a place of healing and hope built where there had once been only pain. As the celebration continued into the evening, customers moved freely through the store, shopping peacefully together, regardless of race, age, or economic background. The transformation was complete, but more importantly, it was sustainable. Elena Barnes had proven that one person's dignity, maintained under pressure, could become a force powerful enough to change not just one store, not just one community, but an entire industry's approach to human respect. The last customer of the evening was a young mother with 2 small children, counting carefully through coupons and calculating prices. She moved through the store without fear of judgment, treated with the same courtesy as every other customer. Her children played happily in the aisles, their laughter echoing off walls that had once witnessed cruelty, but now celebrated the simple radical act of treating everyone with kindness. As the store lights dimmed for the night, Elena Barnes's legacy was secure, not in bronze plaques or named initiatives, but in the changed hearts and minds of everyone who had witnessed what real strength looked like. You just heard a story that history tried to overlook. If it stayed with you, Take a second to stand with it. Subscribe, share, and help us keep telling the stories that deserve light, not silence.